Marriage, as we know it, is often a fragile illusion built from fear. The socially blessed attempt to make love eternal, and yet love, like fire, refuses to stay contained in closed hands. We swear before priests and judges that our hearts will never move, that feelings will remain unshaken, that desire will stand still like mountains. But neither the universe nor the soul works that way. We say, "I love you," and then rush to seal it, notarize it, bind it in law. What was once spontaneous and untamed becomes registered, classified, and stored under watchful eyes. Marriage turns passion into property, not a dance of freedom but a contract of possession, a bond that too often means, "You are mine now." And this is where the fracture begins. For while a few rare unions do bloom in commitment, most dissolve under the weight of illusion. Because love cannot be caged, and marriage for many is not a sanctuary, but a beautiful trap dressed in promises. The fairy tale that never existed. From childhood, we are told that marriage is the ultimate destination of love. Every story, every movie, every tradition paints the same picture. Two people meet, they fall in love, and if the story is good, it ends with a wedding. The ceremony becomes the grand finale, the supposed proof that love has conquered all obstacles. Yet this fairy tale was never real. It was written into our imagination by culture, by society, by repetition. The illusion begins with the way we were taught to imagine our lives. A white dress, a sparkling ring, a promise of happily ever after. The images are powerful because they touch something deep inside, the human longing for certainty, for safety, for belonging. But these images are not reality. They are projections, collective fantasies shaped to keep us believing in an order that does not exist. Carl Jung observed that many of our choices in love are not guided by conscious awareness, but by unconscious forces, projections of our own hidden needs and fears. In marriage, these projections become magnified. We do not marry the other person as they are. We marry the story we've written about them in our minds. We marry the illusion of completion, the hope that this union will solve the emptiness within us. The fairy tale never existed because love does not freeze in time. Feelings move, shift, evolve. Passion burns brightly and then softens. Affection grows or sometimes fades. Yet the story of marriage tells us that nothing should change, that the passion of the first days should remain forever. When reality breaks this expectation, many feel betrayed, as if something has gone wrong. But nothing went wrong. The illusion was simply exposed. Marriage as a cultural construct is not about love alone. It is about control, about stability, about creating a system where people fit into roles. The man, the provider, the woman, the caretaker, the family, the unit. These roles were designed not to honor the soul's journey, but to keep societies orderly. That is why marriage has been treated as sacred. Not because it guarantees love, but because it guarantees structure. Think about the language we use. Settling down, tying the knot, making it official. These words carry the weight of confinement. They suggest that freedom is dangerous, that spontaneity cannot be trusted, that love must be contained within borders. The fairy tale is not about wild passion. It is about ownership dressed as romance. And yet, deep inside, the human heart resists. We crave novelty, growth, expansion. We want to evolve, to explore, to discover. Marriage, as it has been traditionally designed, often clashes with this inner movement. It asks for permanence where life only knows change. It demands certainty where the psyche lives in mystery. This is why so many marriages collapse under their own weight, not always because of betrayal or cruelty or lack of affection, but because the original promise was built on an illusion that love could be sealed and preserved, untouched by time. The fairy tale that never existed keeps us blind to a deeper truth. Real love is not about control, nor about permanence. It is about presence. It is about seeing another soul without trying to own it. It is about walking together freely, knowing that nothing is guaranteed, and that is precisely what makes it sacred. When we look at marriage through this lens, we begin to understand why so many suffer. They entered not into a living relationship, but into a myth they thought was real. A myth that told them life would finally be safe, complete, resolved. But life is never resolved. The soul does not want safety. It wants truth. So the first illusion to break is this: there was never a perfect fairy tale. There was never a happily ever after waiting at the altar. There is only the reality of two human beings, carrying shadows, wounds, and desires. Marriage tries to disguise this with rituals and contracts, but eventually, the disguise falls away. To awaken from the illusion is not to condemn marriage completely, but to see it for what it is: a structure, a stage, a projection. It is not the essence of love, and it never was. Promises made in the heat of the moment. There is a strange magic that happens when two people stand face to face, holding hands, surrounded by music, family, and expectation. The air feels heavy with meaning, as if the universe itself has stopped to listen. In that moment, words like "forever until death do us part" flow easily from the lips. They sound true, absolute, undeniable. But in reality, they are promises made in the heat of the moment, words carried more by emotion than by truth. The ceremony is designed to intensify feeling. The dress, the vows, the applause, the symbolism of rings sliding onto fingers. It is all a theater of certainty. And within that theater, people genuinely believe what they are saying. They feel the rush of love, the weight of tradition, the collective approval. They are swept away by a tide greater than themselves. But tides, by nature, recede. What feels eternal in that instant is often temporary, once real life begins again. Carl Jung wrote extensively about the unconscious power of archetypes, universal symbols that live within the human psyche. The wedding is one of the strongest archetypal rituals in our culture. It activates deep patterns of belonging, continuity, and security. When someone speaks vows, they are not only promising their partner, they are fulfilling a script written into the collective mind. They are acting out the role of the lover who becomes the spouse, the two halves becoming one. But the unconscious weight of this role often overshadows reality. Promises made in these heightened moments are rarely tested against the complexity of human nature. A person promises loyalty without fully understanding their own changing desires. They promise permanence without acknowledging that their heart may shift, that new parts of their soul will emerge with time. They promise to love forever, not realizing that forever is not something any human being can grasp. These words, though sincere in the moment, are fragile when faced with the ordinary storms of life. The illusion lies not only in the promise itself, but in the belief that emotion guarantees truth. Just because something feels deeply real today does not mean it will remain so tomorrow. Feelings are waves. They rise, they fall, they transform. But the marriage ritual asks us to believe that today's wave will remain frozen in place forever. This is not only unrealistic, it is unnatural. When we look honestly, we see that much of what people swear at the altar is a projection of hope. They are not describing what is. They are describing what they want to be. "I will always love you" is less a statement of fact and more a desperate prayer. May I always feel this way. May nothing take this away from me. In that sense, the vows are not contracts but incantations. And like most incantations, they are spoken to ward off fear. Fear of change, fear of abandonment, fear of loss. But Jung reminded us that the shadow always waits beneath the surface. The shadow here is the reality that life will not bend to these words. The relationship will change. The passion will cool. Shadows of boredom, resentment, or unfulfilled desire will appear. And when they do, the vows spoken in passion may feel like chains. What once sounded like devotion may become a burden, a weight of guilt and obligation. This does not mean that promises are meaningless. It means that they must be understood for what they are. Reflections of a moment, not guarantees of eternity. A promise spoken in joy is beautiful, but it cannot stop the river of time. To expect it to do so is to confuse a ritual with reality. The tragedy of many marriages is not that love fades, but that people cling to vows as if they were absolute truth. They measure themselves against words they spoke in another season of life and feel shame when they cannot uphold them. They forget that the promise was never about perfection, it was about intention. But our culture turns intention into obligation, and in doing so transforms love into duty. Promises made in the heat of the moment may carry light, but they cannot carry permanence. To awaken from this illusion is to recognize the beauty of the vow without being enslaved by it. It is to accept that words spoken in one chapter cannot dictate the unfolding of the entire book. Marriage, then, is filled with promises that sound eternal, but are humanly impossible. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson. Love is not meant to be imprisoned by words. It is meant to be lived moment by moment honestly, without the illusion that passion can be captured and preserved forever. Sometimes awareness is the first step toward freedom. If you feel this truth calling you, the Jung Method can guide you deeper. The link is in the first comment. Love or projection of the inner void? Love is one of the most powerful words we know, yet it is also one of the most misunderstood. Many people enter marriage convinced that what they feel is love, when in truth, much of it is projection. Carl Jung explained that projection happens when we place hidden parts of ourselves onto another person, believing they complete us. Instead of seeing the partner clearly, we see a mirror of our own longings, fears, and wounds. In marriage, this projection is often mistaken for destiny. We say, "I can't live without you." But what we mean is, "I cannot face the emptiness within me." The partner becomes a container for unhealed parts of the self. We believe they will fix what is broken, calm our insecurities, and fill our inner void. This illusion is intoxicating in the beginning, but dangerous in the long run. Why? Because projections eventually collapse. When the image we built in our minds no longer matches reality, disappointment sets in. The partner cannot live up to the role of savior, healer, or perfect lover. They are human, with flaws, shadows, and contradictions. The moment we see them clearly, the illusion shatters. Many marriages begin to break not because of lack of love, but because the mask of projection falls away. Jung emphasized that true love requires individuation, the process of knowing and accepting oneself fully. Without this inner work, relationships are built on dependency rather than authenticity. We cling to the other person not out of freedom, but out of fear of facing our own loneliness. The wedding vows may disguise this dependence, but deep down the dynamic remains. One partner leaning on the other to carry what they refuse to face inside. This explains why so many relationships shift into blame. When the partner fails to fulfill the projected role, anger grows. The once perfect spouse becomes inadequate, careless, or distant. But in truth, the failure lies not in them, but in the expectation we placed upon them. No human being can fill another's void. No ceremony can heal the shadow we avoid within. Projection also blinds us to reality. In the glow of infatuation, we may ignore red flags, silence our intuition, or dismiss incompatibility. The projection tells us, "This is the one," even when something inside whispers doubt. And so we bind ourselves in marriage, believing the illusion will hold. But illusions always fade, leaving us face to face with truth. To awaken from this trap, we must ask, is what I feel truly love, or is it my own soul reflected back at me? Am I embracing the other as they are, or am I using them to avoid my own inner work? These questions are uncomfortable, but they are essential. Real love is not built on projection. It is built on recognition. To see another clearly, to honor their individuality without trying to mold them into our fantasy, that is love. It does not demand completion, because it knows wholeness must come from within. It does not cling from fear, because it trusts freedom more than possession. Marriage, when founded on projection, is destined to crack under pressure. But when two people come together, aware of their shadows, responsible for their own healing, Love can flourish without illusion. The challenge is that few are willing to face themselves before they promise themselves to another, and so the cycle repeats. Projection mistaken for love, vows spoken in hope, disappointment when reality emerges. The lesson here is profound. Love cannot save us from ourselves. Only self-knowledge can. Without it, marriage becomes an agreement between shadows, not souls. The routine that kills the spark. In the beginning, love feels like fire. Every look ignites excitement. Every touch carries electricity. Couples believe this flame will last forever, as if passion could be preserved like a photograph. But slowly, almost invisibly, routine begins to creep in. The same mornings, the same meals, the same conversations. What was once spontaneous becomes scheduled. What was once exciting becomes predictable. And so, little by little, the spark begins to fade. Marriage, by its very design, invites routine. The shared home, the responsibilities, the bills, the endless tasks that keep life running. At first, these things feel like part of building a life together, but over time they often overshadow the very reason two people joined in the first place. Passion gives way to management. Instead of lovers, partners become co-workers running the business of survival. Carl Jung noted that the psyche craves mystery and renewal. When everything becomes repetitive, the unconscious seeks ways to reawaken energy. This is why so many long for novelty outside the marriage, through hobbies, fantasies, or even affairs. The desire is not always about another person, but about escaping the dull weight of routine. It is the soul's cry for life beyond repetition. The tragedy is that many believe the fading spark means love has died. In truth, love may still be there, but buried under the heaviness of predictability. The same faces, the same rooms, the same arguments create a sense of emotional suffocation. The marriage becomes less about connection and more about maintenance. And maintenance rarely inspires passion. Routine also magnifies small conflicts. When days repeat, irritations repeat with them. A forgotten chore, a careless word, a silent evening. These tiny moments accumulate until they feel unbearable. What once would have been forgiven easily becomes proof of distance. The relationship turns into a cycle of blame and defense, draining the little energy that remains. The illusion many carry is that marriage itself guarantees intimacy. They believe living together will keep love alive. But living together is not the same as living connected. Sharing a space does not equal sharing a soul. Without intention, routine replaces intimacy and presence turns into absence. Two people may sleep in the same bed while feeling oceans apart. Jung would say this happens because the marriage suppresses the natural flow of opposites. Love thrives in polarity, in the dance between closeness and distance, mystery and revelation. Routine kills this polarity by making everything too familiar. There is no discovery left, no curiosity. The partner becomes fully known, and what is fully known often loses its power to attract. This does not mean stability is wrong. Human beings need grounding, safety, and rhythm. But when stability becomes monotony, it suffocates the very flame it was meant to protect. The danger is not the routine itself, but the unconscious belief that passion will survive without effort, that love will stay alive without renewal. The deeper illusion here is that marriage can protect us from change, that once vows are spoken, the spark will remain untouched. But the spark is not preserved by ritual, it is preserved by awareness. To keep love alive, one must continually create space for mystery, for growth, for rediscovery. Without that, marriage becomes a cage decorated with duty. Many people, when faced with the death of the spark, blame their partner. They think the other has changed or no longer cares. But often the truth is simpler. Routine has dulled their vision. They no longer see the other with fresh eyes, no longer allow wonder to enter daily life. Love is still there, but hidden beneath layers of habit. The routine that kills the spark is not inevitable, but it is powerful. It creeps in quietly, disguised as normalcy, disguised as safety, and if left unchallenged, it transforms passion into silence, intimacy into distance. To awaken is to see this clearly, to realize that the spark does not die on its own. We smother it when we stop being present. Marriage does not kill love. The illusion that love can survive without renewal does. The invisible weight of expectations. From the moment two people say I do, an invisible burden falls upon them. It is not written in the vows, nor spoken aloud at the ceremony, yet it is there, unseen, unmeasured, but heavy. It is the weight of expectations. Marriage carries with it an entire catalog of roles that each partner is supposed to play. The husband is expected to provide, to protect, to remain strong. The wife is expected to nurture, to care, to remain devoted. Even in modern times when gender roles are shifting, the weight of these expectations still lingers. They may be subtler, but they are no less demanding. Carl Jung warned that expectations often come from archetypes buried in the collective unconscious. We inherit them without questioning. They whisper, "This is what a good partner does. This is how a real marriage looks." And so, instead of relating soul to soul, people begin performing roles: husband, wife, provider, caretaker. Love becomes secondary to duty. The danger of these hidden expectations is that they create silent disappointments. When one partner fails to meet the script, resentment grows. The husband feels inadequate if he cannot always provide. The wife feels unworthy if she cannot always give. Neither may speak of it, but both carry the silent ache of not living up to the picture painted by culture. Over time, these disappointments accumulate. Small unmet needs, tiny unspoken desires, little acts of neglect. Each adds weight to the invisible load. And soon marriage becomes less about love and more about survival under pressure. The spark of intimacy dims, not because the couple stopped caring, but because they are exhausted by the effort of meeting impossible expectations. The illusion is that marriage will bring unconditional acceptance, but in reality, marriage often multiplies conditions. Love before marriage may have felt free, spontaneous, forgiving. After marriage, it becomes tied to performance. Are you doing enough? Are you giving enough? Are you meeting the role assigned to you? Jung would say that this happens because people confuse the archetype with the person. They expect their spouse to embody the ideal partner, the perfect father, the perfect wife, the perfect lover. But no human can embody an archetype fully. We are too complex, too contradictory. When we hold our partners to these unconscious standards, they are bound to fail. This invisible weight is what slowly bends the soul. Couples find themselves drained not by each other's love, but by the silent contracts imposed upon them. The man who feels guilty for wanting freedom. The woman who feels guilty for wanting rest. Both trapped in the illusion that marriage should look a certain way, when in truth marriage is nothing more than two imperfect souls trying to walk together. The expectations also rob love of its authenticity. Instead of asking, "Who are you today?" we ask, "Are you fulfilling the role I need you to play?" This subtle shift transforms intimacy into evaluation, curiosity into judgment. The relationship becomes a scorecard rather than a dance. The invisible weight can also breed shame. Partners may feel they are failing not just each other, but the institution itself. Divorce becomes a taboo, not because the love is alive, but because breaking the contract means failing in the eyes of society, and so many remain together under the crushing load, hiding their dissatisfaction, pretending the illusion still holds. The truth is simple yet difficult to accept. No partner can carry all of our expectations. No marriage can fulfill every dream we place upon it. To believe otherwise is to set ourselves up for heartbreak. The only way forward is to release the illusion, to let go of the silent roles and meet each other as humans, not as perfect archetypes. To free marriage from this invisible weight is to see clearly, to say, "You are not my savior, not my fantasy, not my endless provider. You are simply you, and that is enough." Without this awakening, expectations remain chains, and chains no matter how beautifully decorated, always suffocate love. Why we seek safety instead of love. Deep within the human heart lies a paradox. We long for love, wild, passionate, transformative. Yet when we are offered love, we often exchange it for something else, safety. This is one of the hidden truths of marriage. Beneath the flowers, vows, and celebrations, many are not seeking love itself. They are seeking the comfort of security, the illusion of permanence, the shelter of stability. Carl Jung taught that the psyche is shaped by opposites. On one side, the desire for freedom and passion. On the other, the desire for safety and belonging. Marriage, as an institution, often leans heavily towards safety. It promises protection against loneliness, social disapproval, and uncertainty. But in doing so, it often asks us to sacrifice the very spark that makes love alive. We seek safety because the unknown terrifies us. To love without guarantees feels dangerous. To desire without contracts feels unstable. So we create rituals, sign papers, wear rings, all to convince ourselves that love can be secured. But love is not a house we can lock. It is a wind that moves where it will. When we try to confine it, we trade its fire for a predictable flame that may warm us but rarely excites us. The illusion begins when we mistake safety for love. A partner may provide comfort, reliability, and routine, but none of these equal passion. Stability is not intimacy. Predictability is not devotion. Yet many marriages survive not because love thrives, but because safety feels easier than risk. The heart quietly hungers for more, but the fear of loss keeps people chained to the familiar. Jung would say this is the voice of the shadow, the part of us that fears growth, that resists the unknown, that clings to security at the expense of authenticity. The shadow whispers, "Stay where it is safe. Do not challenge the order. Do not risk your comfort for something uncertain." And so we obey, mistaking the absence of fear for the presence of love. This is why so many couples remain together even when intimacy has died. The safety of the structure outweighs the emptiness inside. The house is paid, the routines are stable, the roles are clear. To break free would mean facing the wilderness of self-discovery, the chaos of beginning again. And most people prefer the illusion of safety over the reality of freedom. But the cost is high. When we choose safety over love, we silence parts of the soul. We numb our passion, repress our desires, and live lives of quiet dissatisfaction. We tell ourselves we are loyal, committed, responsible. Yet inside, a voice keeps asking, is this truly love, or am I simply afraid of being alone? The illusion is further strengthened by society. Culture rewards those who stay within the boundaries of marriage. Even if the marriage is lifeless, stability is praised while separation is judged. This external pressure convinces us that choosing safety is noble, even when it suffocates the soul. But Jung reminded us that true growth comes only through confrontation with the unconscious. To live authentically, we must face the fear of instability and embrace the unknown. The question is not whether safety is bad. Safety has its place. It provides grounding, structure, and peace. But when safety becomes the substitute for love, it kills the essence of connection. Real love requires risk. It requires vulnerability, uncertainty, and the courage to face change. To love is to step into the unknown without guarantees. Without that risk, what we call love may be nothing more than a comfortable arrangement. To awaken from this illusion is to ask ourselves, am I here because of love or because of fear? Am I choosing this bond because it expands my soul or because it protects me from loneliness? These questions strip away the disguise of safety and reveal the truth beneath. Marriage often disguises itself as love, but it may only be safety dressed in romance. And while safety soothes the mind, it cannot feed the soul. Only love can. And love, by its nature, will always ask for more than safety. It will ask for freedom. The shadow hidden behind marriage. On the surface, marriage looks pure. White dresses, sacred vows, golden rings. It appears to be an institution of light, built on devotion and stability. But beneath this polished image lies a darker truth. Marriage often hides the shadow of the human psyche. Carl Jung described the shadow as the part of ourselves we refuse to see, the desires we suppress, the fears we deny, the impulses we condemn. When two people marry, they do not only join their light, they also join their shadows. And often these shadows are stronger than the love they promise. The illusion is that marriage will cure loneliness, heal insecurities, and erase doubts. But what usually happens is the opposite. The shadow finds a stage. Old wounds resurface, triggered by the closeness of another soul. Jealousy, control, resentment, fear of abandonment, all emerge more powerfully inside the frame of marriage than outside it. The bond does not dissolve the shadow. It amplifies it. Many enter marriage thinking they have chosen a partner. But in truth, they have chosen their own mirror. The spouse becomes a screen where the unconscious projects everything hidden. The anger we repress, the weakness we deny, the needs we disown. They are all thrown onto the other. We accuse them of being cold, distant, selfish. Yet often, these are qualities we refuse to admit in ourselves. This is why so many marriages turn into battles. Not because love was false, but because the shadow was ignored. Instead of recognizing the projection, partners blame each other. They believe the problem lies in the other person, when in reality it lies in the unexamined parts of the self. The danger of this shadow is that it thrives in silence. Most couples avoid confronting it directly. They fear the truth it reveals, so they cover it with routine, with distractions, with empty rituals. But the shadow does not disappear. It waits. And when ignored long enough, it erupts, in explosive arguments, betrayals, or quiet withdrawal. Jung taught that wholeness requires integration of the shadow. Until we face what we deny, we remain prisoners of it. Marriage, then, is not just a union of two people. It is a confrontation with the darkest corners of the psyche. If we are unprepared, the weight of this confrontation can destroy the bond. The illusion that marriage is purely sacred blinds us to this reality. We expect harmony but receive conflict. We expect unconditional acceptance but face criticism. And we interpret these struggles as failure, when they are, in fact, the natural work of the shadow being revealed. The tragedy is not that shadows appear. It is that most people never learn how to face them. This is why many marriages dissolve in bitterness. Not because love was absent, but because the shadow was never acknowledged. The relationship becomes a war of projections, each blaming the other for the darkness they carry inside. The bond that was meant to bring unity ends in division. But there is another way. To recognize that marriage is not only about love and safety, but about growth. To see the shadow as a teacher, not an enemy. To admit, I project my fears onto, you. I see in you what I cannot face in myself. This honesty does not destroy intimacy. It deepens it. It turns marriage from illusion into a path of transformation. Yet few are willing to walk this path. It requires courage, vulnerability, and relentless self-awareness. It requires letting go of the fantasy that marriage is a fairy tale. Instead, it is a mirror, sometimes beautiful, sometimes terrifying. And only those who are willing to face their own shadow can truly thrive within it. The hidden shadow of marriage reminds us of one truth. Love is not enough if it is blind. Without awareness, the shadow will always rule the union. But with awareness, the shadow becomes the doorway to deeper connection. Marriage is not just a bond of love. It is also a meeting of shadows, and to ignore this is to remain trapped in illusion, when freedom matters more than the ring. Marriage is often seen as the highest form of commitment, the ultimate proof of devotion. The ring on the finger becomes a symbol of security, belonging, and loyalty. But for many, the ring also becomes a chain. What began as love transforms into obligation. What began as choice becomes duty. And in this transformation, something essential is lost: freedom. Human beings are born with an inner drive toward growth and expansion. The soul does not want to remain static. It wants to explore, to evolve, to experience the fullness of life. Yet marriage often promises the opposite: permanence, sameness, predictability. The illusion is that stability equals happiness. But stability without freedom suffocates. Carl Jung would say that true wholeness cannot exist without freedom. When we suppress our authentic desires to fit the mold of marriage, we split ourselves in two. One part plays the role society demands, the faithful spouse, the devoted partner. The other part hides in the shadow, quietly longing for more. This hidden self eventually demands expression, and when it does, conflict erupts. Affairs, resentment, or silent withdrawal are often not signs of malice, but symptoms of a soul craving freedom. The tragedy is that many confuse this craving with selfishness. They believe wanting freedom means abandoning love. But the opposite is true. Real love cannot thrive without freedom. Love that is forced is not love. It is control. Love that is demanded by contract loses its essence. Only when both partners are free to choose each other every day does love remain alive. The illusion of marriage tells us that once vows are spoken, choice is no longer necessary. But love without choice is hollow. To say I love you only has meaning if it could be otherwise. To stay only has value if leaving is still possible. Freedom does not weaken love. It strengthens it by making it real. This is why so many feel trapped after the wedding. They no longer feel like lovers. They feel like prisoners of their own promise. The ring on their finger no longer symbolizes devotion. It symbolizes loss of self. And when the self is lost, no relationship can survive. Intact, Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming one's true self, is the highest calling of the human soul. Any structure, including marriage, that prevents individuation becomes destructive. To remain whole, we must remain free. And if a marriage cannot hold space for freedom, it becomes an illusion, a cage decorated with vows. The deeper truth is that freedom and love are not enemies. They are inseparable. Love without freedom is possession. Freedom without love is isolation. Only when the two meet do we experience the fullness of connection. The challenge is that marriage, as traditionally designed, rarely allows both. It leans heavily toward security and ownership, leaving freedom out of the equation. But freedom is not about abandoning responsibility or rejecting commitment. It is about authenticity. It is about being able to say, I choose you, not because I have to, but because I want to. When this choice is alive, love breathes. When it is absent, love dies. The illusion that marriage alone guarantees happiness blinds us to this truth. The ring may symbolize eternity, but eternity has no meaning if it is not freely chosen. Real intimacy is born not from chains, but from the courage to remain free and still stay. In the end, perhaps the greatest illusion is believing that love needs to be bound at all. What if love was never meant to be owned, but simply shared? What if the true test of devotion is not permanence but presence? When freedom matters more than the ring, love is no longer an illusion. It is alive.